My name is Helen Markson. I'm 62 years old, and last Sunday evening, my daughter-in-law threw a crystal wine glass at my face with enough force to cut my cheek to the bone. As the blood ran down my shirt and my son screamed that I was being selfish, I did something they didn't expect. I smiled. I drove myself to the emergency room, texted my lawyer, and activated phase 2 of a plan I'd been building for 6 months. You see, they thought I was a weak, confused old woman holding on to something I couldn't manage anymore. They thought they could take what my late husband and I built with our bare hands. They thought that because I'm 62, I'm stupid. They were wrong. Before we continue, please subscribe and hit that notification bell. And let us know where in the world you're watching from in the comments. Let me take you back 6 months. Back to the moment I realized my own son was planning to destroy me. It started on a Wednesday afternoon in March. Ordinary, unremarkable, the kind of day that changes your life without announcing itself. I was in my office at Markson & Associates, the import-export company my late husband David and I built from absolutely nothing. We started with $200,000, a shipping container full of hope and more dreams than sense. 23 years later, that little company was worth $8 million. David died 3 years ago, sudden heart attack. One moment he was laughing at something stupid I'd said about our morning coffee being strong enough to fuel a cargo ship. The next moment, he was gone. The company became my lifeline. Every invoice I signed, every client I called, every container I tracked across the ocean, it was my way of keeping him alive, of honoring what we'd built together. I was good at it too, better than I'd ever been. In the 3 years since David's death, I'd grown our client base by 40%. I'd negotiated contracts with suppliers in Vietnam, Malaysia, and South Korea that David would have been proud of. But that Wednesday, my son Ryan walked into my office unannounced. He's 32, tall like his father, but without David's backbone. Ryan has always been the kind of man who bends whichever way the wind blows strongest. As a boy, that made him sweet, agreeable, easy. As a man, it made him dangerous. "Hey, Mom," he said, that careful smile on his face, the smile that meant he wanted something. "You got a minute?" I looked up from my laptop. "Of course, honey." "What's going on?" He sat down across from my desk, fidgeting with his phone. That should have been my first clue. Ryan only fidgets when he's lying. So, Sienna and I were talking last night. Sienna, his wife of 18 months, a 28-year-old lifestyle influencer with 73,000 Instagram followers and the moral compass of a hungry shark. "And?" I prompted, already feeling that old investigator instinct kick in, the one I'd honed during my 20 years as a federal fraud investigator before David and I started the business. "We were thinking, Mom, you've been working so hard, like really hard. Since Dad died, you've basically lived here." "I enjoy my work, Ryan." I know, but..." He leaned forward, his voice dropping into that concerned son register that immediately made my skin prickle. "Don't you think it might be time to, slow down, enjoy your retirement?" I kept my face neutral, friendly, curious. "Retirement?" "Yeah, you're 62, Mom. You've earned it. You could travel, take up gardening, spend time with us, with your future grandkids." Future grandkids. The carrot he knew would tempt me. "That's sweet, honey," I said carefully. "But I'm not ready to retire. This company is your father's legacy. It's my legacy. I'm not done yet." Something flickered across his face. Disappointment? Frustration? It was gone too quickly for me to name it. "Right. Sure. Sienna had some really great ideas about modernizing the business, social media marketing, rebranding, expanding into e-commerce. We think there's so much potential you might be, missing." There it was. The real message hidden inside all that concern. You're too old. You're missing opportunities. You need us. "I appreciate that," I said, my smile never wavering. "Tell Sienna I'd love to hear her ideas sometime." Ryan's face brightened immediately. Too immediately. "Really? That's great. She'll be so excited. Maybe we could all sit down together, go over some stuff? Absolutely. Let's plan something. He left my office practically bouncing, and the moment his footsteps faded down the hallway, I opened a new folder on my computer. I titled it Project Lighthouse, because I was about to shine a very bright light on whatever my son and his wife were planning. For the next 2 weeks, I played the part of the oblivious mother. I smiled when Ryan called. Oh, I listened when Sienna sent me long voice messages about synergizing our brand presence. I nodded thoughtfully when they'd drop by the office unannounced, casually asking questions about client contracts and profit margins. But while I smiled and nodded, I was investigating. See, here's what most people don't understand about me. I didn't just work as a fraud investigator. I was good at it. For 20 years, I tracked financial criminals, embezzlers, and con artists who thought they were smarter than everyone else. I learned to see patterns, to follow the money, to recognize when someone was setting up a con, and my son was setting up a con. It took me exactly 9 days to find the first thread. I was at home, supposedly watching some mindless television show, when I decided to do a casual background check. Nothing invasive. Just the kind of search any concerned mother might do. I pulled Ryan's credit report. What I found made my blood turn to ice water. Ryan owed money. A lot of money. $180,000 to be exact. But it wasn't to a bank or a credit card company. The debt was listed under a private LLC I'd never heard of, Apex Capital Ventures. I dug deeper. Apex Capital Ventures was a private investment group based in Miami, the kind that didn't advertise, didn't have a website, and definitely didn't operate like a legitimate lending institution, the kind that broke kneecaps when payments were late. My son, my sweet, weak, foolish son, had gotten involved with loan sharks. The money had been borrowed 18 months ago, right around the time he married Sienna. According to the payment history, he'd been making minimum payments for a while, but 3 months ago the payments stopped. He was drowning, and he saw me, saw my company, my life's work, as his lifeboat. I didn't confront him. That would have been a mistake. Confrontation gives people a chance to prepare, to spin a story, to manipulate. Instead, I kept digging. I hired a private investigator, an old colleague from my federal days named Marcus Webb. I gave him one instruction. Find out everything about Sienna Clark Markson. Everything. What Marcus found was worse than I'd imagined. Sienna wasn't just a spoiled influencer. She was actively embezzling from her employer, a boutique marketing agency in the city. Over the past year, she'd siphoned approximately $53,000 through fake vendor invoices and inflated expense reports. The agency was small, disorganized, and hadn't noticed yet, but they would. Marcus estimated they'd discover the discrepancy within the next quarter when they did their annual audit. Sienna knew she was on borrowed time, and then there were her parents, Jerry and Patricia Clark. Sienna's beloved mom and dad, who she constantly posted about on Instagram, with captions like, "Family is everything," and "blessed to have these two." They were con artists, professional ones. They'd spent the last 20 years running various schemes, fake business consulting, fraudulent investment opportunities, and most recently, a bankruptcy scam in Arizona. They'd declared bankruptcy, hiding assets under shell companies, and were currently under investigation by federal prosecutors. They were desperate, broke, and running out of options. My son had married into a family of criminals, and now they were all looking at my company like starving wolves looking at a sheep. The second blow came 3 weeks later. I was working late at the office reviewing contracts when I decided to check the security footage. We had cameras throughout the building, standard procedure for any business handling valuable inventory. I queued up the footage from 2 nights earlier, a night I'd been home, supposedly alone in the building after everyone left, except I wasn't alone. At 9:47 p.m., my son's keycard accessed the building. He walked straight to my office. I watched him sit at my desk, open my laptop, which I deliberately left logged in, and spend 43 minutes photographing documents, client lists, supplier contacts, profit and loss statements, bank account information. He wasn't even subtle about it. He used his phone, the flash on, clicking away like he was on a museum tour. When he was done, he closed everything carefully, making sure it looked untouched, and left. My own son, stealing from me. I sat in that dark office watching the footage loop, and something inside me crystallized. This wasn't about money anymore. This wasn't even about the company. This was about respect, about whether I was going to let my own child treat me like I was already dead. I made my decision right there. I wasn't going to confront him. I wasn't going to cut him off. I wasn't going to have a tearful conversation about betrayal and disappointment. I was going to give him exactly enough rope to hang himself. The trap took 2 months to build. First, I called my attorney, Ben Castellano. Ben had been David's best friend since college and had handled all our legal work for 20 years. He was also brilliant, ruthless when necessary, and completely loyal. "Ben," I said when he answered, "I need to make some changes to the business structure." "What kind of changes?" "The kind that protects everything David and I built from being stolen by our son." There was a long silence. Then, "Tell me everything." I did. I told him about the debt, the embezzlement, the theft of documents, the whole sordid mess. When I was finished, Ben let out a low whistle. "Helen, I'm so sorry." "Don't be sorry. Help me build a fortress." Over the next 6 weeks, Ben and I restructured everything. We created the David Markson Memorial Trust, an irrevocable trust that held all assets of Markson and Associates. I wasn't the primary beneficiary. David's sister Linda was the trustee, and upon my death, everything would be liquidated and donated to a scholarship fund for first-generation immigrant entrepreneurs. Ryan couldn't touch it, couldn't contest it, couldn't claim inheritance rights. But here was the beautiful part. I buried that paperwork deep. To anyone looking casually, say a desperate son stealing documents from his mother's office, it would still look like I personally owned everything. Next, I installed cameras. Not the obvious security cameras we already had. These were different. Pinhole cameras, invisible to the naked eye, installed in my home office and dining room, every angle covered, every word recorded, cloud uploaded in real time to a secure server. Then came the performance. I started making mistakes at work, small ones. Forgetting a client's name during a phone call, scheduling the same meeting twice, leaving documents in the wrong folder. Nothing catastrophic, but enough to build a pattern. I'd see Ryan and Sienna exchange glances, little smirks, the kind that said, "See, she's losing it." I left carefully crafted evidence on my desk, a fake succession plan document that made it look like I was considering retirement, notes about feeling overwhelmed and forgetful, a brochure for senior living communities. I was painting a picture of a confused, declining woman who didn't realize she couldn't manage her own life anymore, and they were buying every single brushstroke. Finally, 8 days ago, I made the call. I phoned Ryan on a Thursday afternoon. I made sure my voice sounded tired, a little uncertain. "Honey, I've been thinking about what you said. About retirement, about slowing down." I could practically hear him perk up through the phone. "Yeah, Mom, what about it?" Maybe you were right. Maybe it is time to think about transitioning the business. I don't want to work forever." "Mom, that's great, really great. Have you thought about how you want to do that?" "I was hoping we could talk about it. Maybe over dinner, you and Sienna, and I know her parents are in town. Why don't we all sit down together? This Sunday?" There was a pause. I could almost hear the gears turning in his head. "You want Sienna's parents there?" "Well, they have business experience, don't they? I'd love their input. Let's make it special. I'll cook. We'll have wine. We'll talk about the future." Yeah, Mom. That sounds perfect. Wonderful. Sunday at 6. My house. When I hung up, I immediately called Ben. "The dinner is set," I said. "Sunday at 6. "Are you sure about this, Helen? Once we start—" "I'm sure. They're coming for my company, Ben. They think I'm too old, too confused, too Asian to understand modern business. They think they're going to swoop in and save the day while stealing everything David and I built. And you're going to let them show exactly who they are. On camera, in front of witnesses, with their own words as evidence. Ben sighed. I'll have the documents ready, and I'll make sure we have police on standby. Not yet. We wait until after they make their move. I need them to feel confident, arrogant. I need them to overplay their hand. You're a scary woman, Helen Markson. I smiled at my reflection in the dark computer screen. I learned from the best criminals in the country, Ben. I know exactly how they think. Sunday arrived like any other spring evening, warm, clear, the kind of night that makes you believe good things are possible. I spent the afternoon preparing. I made David's favorite meal, roasted chicken with herbs, garlic mashed potatoes, and green beans. I set the dining room table with our good china, the set we'd bought in Portugal during our anniversary trip, and I activated every camera. At exactly 6 o'clock, I heard the doorbell. I took a deep breath, smoothed my blouse, put on my best confused elderly mother's smile, and I opened the door. There they stood, Ryan, looking nervous and pale, Sienna dressed in designer clothes I knew she'd bought with stolen money, her smile sharp as broken glass. And behind them, Jerry and Patricia Clark. Her parents, looking around my entryway like appraisers at an estate sale. Mom, Ryan said, too loud, too cheerful. He hugged me stiffly. You look great. Thank you, sweetheart. Come in, everyone, please. They filed in. Sienna barely acknowledged me, just air-kissed near my cheek and walked past. Her parents did the same, their eyes already scanning the house, cataloging, calculating. Jerry Clark was in his 60s, with the kind of tan that comes from golf courses and lying by resort pools. Patricia was carefully preserved, all Botox and highlights and jewelry that screamed, I'm expensive. Helen, Jerry said, extending his hand with practiced warmth. Thank you so much for having us. We've heard wonderful things about your business. Oh, it's nothing special, I said, playing my role. Just something David and I stumbled into. Honestly, I'm not even sure I understand half of it anymore. It's all so complicated these days. I saw Sienna and Ryan exchange a look. Perfect. We sat down to dinner. I served the food, playing the doting mother, asking about their lives, their plans, staying deliberately vague and a little scattered. So, Patricia said, cutting delicately into her chicken, Ryan mentioned you were thinking about retirement. Did I? I blinked, confused. Oh, yes, maybe. I don't know. It's all so much to manage. Of course it is, Sienna said, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. Mom, that's totally normal. You've been working so hard since Dad died. You deserve rest. I suppose. The thing is, Jerry interjected, leaning forward with that consultant energy, businesses like yours need young energy. Fresh perspectives. The import-export game is changing fast. E-commerce, digital supply chains, social media marketing, these are things your generation just didn't grow up with. Your generation. The condescension was so thick I could taste it. You're probably right, I said softly, looking down at my plate. I don't understand those TikToks and Instagrams. It's all so confusing. Which is why, Sienna said, her voice suddenly harder, sharper. We think it's time to make this official. I looked up. Official. Ryan cleared his throat. He looked like he was going to be sick. Mom, we've been talking, all of us, and we really think, it would be best if you transitioned ownership of Markson and Associates to me, like, officially, this week. The room went very quiet. I let the silence stretch, let them see the confusion on my face, the hurt, the dawning realization. But the company, it's all I have left of your father. Exactly, Patricia said, jumping in, which is why it needs to stay in the family. Ryan is family. He'll protect his father's legacy. By running it properly, Jerry added, with people who understand modern business. I looked at my son, my only child, the boy I'd raised, loved, sacrificed for. Ryan, is this really what you want? He wouldn't meet my eyes, just like he wouldn't meet them that night 6 months from now when his wife would throw a glass at my face. It's for the best, Mom. That's when Sienna pulled out a folder. She placed it on the table between us like a lawyer serving papers. We've already had documents drawn up, she said, transferring 51% ownership to Ryan. You'll keep 49%. You'll still be involved, still collecting income. But Ryan will have controlling interest. He'll make the decisions. My hands started to shake, not from fear, from rage. But I made it look like confusion, like an old woman overwhelmed. I don't know if I can just... Mom, Ryan's voice was harder now. We're not asking anymore. And there it was, the mask finally slipping. We need you to sign these papers tonight. We've already scheduled meetings with the bank, with your suppliers. This is happening. I stood up from the table. My chair scraped loudly against the hardwood floor. No. The single word dropped like a stone. Sienna's face transformed. All that fake sweetness evaporated, revealing something cold and vicious underneath. What did you just say? I said no. This is my company. My husband's legacy. I'm not signing anything. You selfish, Sienna started, but Jerry put a hand on her arm. Helen, he said, his voice taking on a threatening edge, you need to understand something. We're trying to help you, but if you won't accept our help willingly, we have other options. What option? I asked, my voice steady. Patricia smiled. It wasn't kind. We've already spoken with a very reputable geriatric specialist, Dr. Miles. He's prepared to testify that you're experiencing cognitive decline, that you're no longer capable of managing your own affairs. There it was, the real plan. They were going to have me declared incompetent. You wouldn't, I whispered. We will, Sienna said flatly, because you're not thinking clearly. You're holding on to something you can't handle anymore. You're being... She stood up, her hands gripping the edge of the table. You're being selfish. And that's when I decided it was time to end Act 1. I looked her dead in the eye and said 5 words that would change everything. Get out of my house. The words hung in the air like smoke after a gunshot. For 3 full seconds, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The only sound was the grandfather clock in the hallway. David's grandfather clock, the one he'd inherited from his father, ticking away the moments before everything exploded. Sienna's face did something I'd never seen a human face do before. It collapsed and rebuilt itself in the span of a heartbeat. The shock melted into confusion, then hardened into something that looked almost reptilian, cold, calculating, dangerous. Excuse me, she said, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. That's when I knew I had her. See, quiet rage is always more dangerous than loud rage. Quiet rage is the kind that makes mistakes, the kind that loses control. I straightened my spine. 62 years old, and I've never felt more powerful than I did in that moment. You heard me, all of you. Get out of my house. This dinner is over. Ryan stood up so fast his chair nearly toppled backward. His face had gone from pale to blotchy red, and I could see his hands shaking. Mom, wait. Just wait. You're not thinking clearly. You need to listen to... I don't need to do anything, Ryan. This is my house, my company, and I'm telling you to leave. Jerry Clark pushed back from the table, his consultant's charm evaporating like morning mist. Now hold on just a minute, Helen. You're making a very serious mistake here. We're your family. We're trying to help you, and you're being... Careful with your next word, Jerry, I said, my voice like ice. Because whatever you say next, I promise you'll regret it. Patricia stood up, her expensive jewelry catching the light. Helen, we all know you've been struggling, making mistakes at work, forgetting things. This kind of irrational behavior is exactly what we've been worried about. Oh, they were building their case. Right here, right now, establishing the pattern of my incompetence for whatever court proceedings they had planned. But what they didn't know, what they couldn't possibly know, was that every single word was being recorded in crystal clear high definition. I'm not struggling, I said. measuring each word carefully. I'm not confused, and I'm not signing over my company to anyone, especially not to people who've been stealing from me. Ryan's face went white. What? Mom? That's crazy. Nobody's stealing. Really, Ryan? So you didn't use your key card to access the office 3 weeks ago at 9:47 p.m.? You didn't spend 43 minutes photographing confidential documents from my computer? The color drained completely from his face. He looked like he might actually faint. Sienna's eyes narrowed. How do you... She caught herself, but it was too late. The admission was written all over her face. How do I know? I smiled. It wasn't a kind smile, because I'm not the senile old woman you think I am. I'm a former federal fraud investigator with 20 years of experience tracking criminals who thought they were smarter than everyone else. I took a step toward them. They actually stepped back. I know about Ryan's $180,000 debt to Apex Capital Ventures. I know they're loan sharks. I know the payment stopped 3 months ago. Ryan made a small choking sound. I know about your embezzlement, Sienna. $53,000 from your employer through fake vendor invoices. Very sloppy work, by the way. They're going to find it during next quarter's audit. Sienna's hands were gripping the chair so hard her knuckles turned white. And Jerry, Patricia, I know all about your bankruptcy fraud in Arizona. The shell companies, the hidden assets. I know the federal prosecutors are building a case against you right now. Patricia actually gasped. Jerry's face went purple. So when you sit at my table, in my home, and tell me I'm confused and incompetent, what you're really doing is projecting. You're all desperate, drowning criminals who thought you could use me as a life raft. I walked to the front door and opened it. The cool evening air rushed in. Now get out, all of you, before I call the police. That's when Sienna made her fatal mistake. Instead of leaving, instead of cutting her losses and running, she did what all cornered predators do. She attacked. You can't do this, she hissed, moving toward me. You think you're so smart? You think you can just dismiss us like we're nothing? Sienna... Ryan tried to grab her arm, but she shook him off violently. No, I'm done playing nice with this bitter old woman. Her voice was rising now, losing all pretense of control. You sit here in your dead husband's house, playing with your dead husband's company, acting like you're some kind of queen, but you're nothing. You're just a sad, lonely old woman who can't accept that she's past her prime. Sienna, stop, Jerry said urgently. Let's just go. We'll figure this out tomorrow. But Sienna was done listening to anyone. I could see it in her eyes, that wild, desperate look of someone who knows they're losing everything and is willing to burn the whole world down rather than accept defeat. You know what your problem is, Helen? She was walking toward me now, and I held my ground. Your problem is you're holding on to something you don't deserve. That company should be Ryan's. By right, by blood. You're just the wife, the immigrant wife who got lucky when she married a white man with money. There it was. The racism she'd been hiding under all those Instagram posts about celebrating diversity and loving all cultures. Ryan looked horrified. Sienna. What the hell? Oh, shut up, Ryan, she snapped. Grow a spine for once in your pathetic life. Your mother is stealing your inheritance. She's stealing your future, our future, and you're just going to stand there? I watched my son's face, watched the war playing out behind his eyes, the choice between his mother and his wife, between doing what was right and doing what was easy. He chose easy. Mom, he said, his voice weak and pleading. Mom, just sign the papers. Please, you don't understand. I need this. I don't have a choice. Everyone has a choice, Ryan, I said quietly, and you've made yours. That's when Sienna started screaming. You selfish! Her voice cracked on the word, raw and ugly. You're ruining our lives. You're destroying your own son because you're too stubborn and too stupid to see that you can't do this anymore. She grabbed the wine glass from the table, the crystal one, still half full of the expensive Cabernet she'd brought, the one she'd been drinking from all night. Time slowed down. I saw her fingers wrap around the stem. saw her arm draw back, saw the dark red wine slosh against the sides of the glass. Jerry lunged toward her. "Sienna, no!" Patricia screamed. "Stop!" Ryan was frozen, his mouth open, his hand reaching out but not fast enough, never fast enough. And Sienna's face, God, her face was a mask of pure, undiluted hatred. The kind of hatred that comes from someone who spent their whole life taking what they want and suddenly finding an obstacle they can't manipulate or charm or steal away. "You can't turn your back on me," she shrieked, and she threw it. I could have moved. I'm 62, not dead. I saw it coming. I had time to duck, to dodge, to raise my arm and block it. But I didn't. Because in that split second I made a calculation. A cold, ruthless calculation that would have made my younger self proud. If I dodged, this was just an attempted assault. Ugly, but arguable. She could claim she just lost her temper, that she didn't really mean to hurt me, that it was an accident in the heat of the moment. But if I let it hit me, the glass struck my face with a wet, sickening crack. The pain was immediate and electric, like being stung by 1,000 wasps all at once, all concentrated on my right cheekbone. I felt the crystal shatter against my face, felt the sharp edges slice through skin, felt something warm and wet start running down my cheek. The wine splashed across my face, cold and stinging, mixing with the blood that I could already feel welling up from the cut. It soaked into my white blouse, spreading like a crimson bloom. For a moment, there was absolute silence. I didn't move. I didn't cry out. I just stood there, perfectly still, and let them see what they had done. Sienna's arm was still extended, her hand empty now, her face frozen in an expression of absolute horror. Not horror at what she'd done to me, horror that she'd lost control so completely. Patricia had both hands over her mouth, her eyes wide. Jerry was white as paper. And Ryan, my son, my only child, was pressed against the far wall as if he was trying to merge with it. His hands were clamped over his mouth, his eyes huge with terror. But he wasn't moving toward me, wasn't asking if I was okay, wasn't helping. He was just watching his mother bleed. That's when something inside me, the last tiny fragment of motherly love I'd been holding on to, finally, completely died. I slowly raised my hand to my face, not to cover the wound, but to touch it, to feel it. My fingers came away slick with blood and wine, and I looked at them with what must have seemed like clinical detachment. Then I looked directly at Sienna and smiled. It was a small smile, just a slight lifting at the corners of my mouth, but it was the most terrifying smile I have ever produced, because it was completely genuine. I was happy. "Thank you, Sienna," I said, my voice perfectly calm, perfectly steady. "You just gave me everything I need." Her knees actually buckled. She grabbed the back of the chair to keep from falling. What does that mean?" I didn't answer. Instead, I walked past her, past all of them, to the entry table where I'd left my purse and my car keys. My reflection in the hallway mirror was shocking even to me. Blood was running freely down the right side of my face, dripping off my jaw. My white blouse was soaked crimson. I looked like something from a horror movie. Perfect. "Mom?" Ryan's voice was barely a whisper. "Mom, where are you going? We can clean this up. We can talk about this." I picked up my keys. My hands were absolutely steady. "I'm going to the emergency room, Ryan. I'll need a medical report for the police." The word police landed like a bomb. "Police?" Sienna's voice went shrill. You can't call the police. This was an accident. An accident." You provoked me." I opened the front door. The evening air felt cool and clean against my bloody face. "You can say whatever you want, Sienna, but the cameras in my dining room don't lie, and they've been recording this entire lovely dinner." I didn't wait to see their faces. I didn't need to. I could feel the shock, the horror, the dawning realization of what they'd walked into. I stepped out onto the porch and closed the door behind me. I drove myself to the hospital. I didn't speed. I didn't run red lights. I drove my 10-year-old Honda exactly at the speed limit, signaling properly at every turn, stopping completely at every stop sign. The blood was a problem. It kept running down my face, dripping onto my lap, soaking through the napkin I was pressing against my cheek. At one red light, the driver in the car next to me stared in horror. I just smiled and waved with my free hand. By the time I pulled into the St. Mary's emergency room parking lot, the napkin was completely soaked through. I parked neatly, turned off the car, and took a moment to look at myself in the rearview mirror. The cut was deep, a 3-inch jagged gash running from just below my right eye down my cheekbone. It was bleeding profusely, the way facial wounds do. My blouse was ruined. I looked exactly like what I was, a victim of assault. Except I wasn't a victim. I was an investigator, and I was about to file Exhibit A. I walked calmly through the automatic doors of the ER. The triage nurse, a young man with kind eyes, looked up from his computer, and his face went pale. "Oh my God, ma'am, what happened? Did you fall?" "I did not fall," I said clearly, standing directly under the bright fluorescent lights so he could see every detail. "My name is Helen Markson, date of birth, March 8th, 1963. At approximately 7:15 p.m. this evening, at my residence, my daughter-in-law Sienna Markson assaulted me by throwing a crystal wine glass at my face." The nurse's expression changed instantly. This wasn't a clumsy old lady. This was a crime scene. "I need medical treatment," I continued, my voice steady and professional. "And I need you to document everything. I will be pressing charges." He was already on his feet, guiding me toward a wheelchair. "Of course, Mrs. Markson. Right away. I'm calling security and notifying the police. This is assault." "Yes," I said, sitting down in the wheelchair. "Yes, it is." They took me to a private room. A young doctor, Dr. Sarah Chen, her name tag read, came in immediately, her face grave. "Mrs. Markson, I'm Dr. Chen. Let's take a look at this." She reached toward my face with a sterile wipe. I leaned back. "Before you clean it, doctor, I need photographs." She paused, confused. "Ma'am? Before you treat this wound, I need high-resolution photographs documenting the injury exactly as it is right now. The angle, the depth, the blood pattern on my clothing. This is evidence." Understanding dawned on her face. "Of course, this is an assault case. We have a protocol for this." She turned to the nurse. "Get the forensic documentation kit." For the next 10 minutes, I sat under harsh lights while they photographed my face from every angle. Flash, flash, flash. Each picture was another lock clicking shut on the cage I was building for my son and his wife. "The cut is deep," Dr. Chen said finally, examining it closely. "It's gone right to the bone. You're lucky it didn't damage your eye. You'll need stitches. At least 6. 6 is fine," I said. "I don't need it to look pretty." As she began cleaning the wound, the antiseptic stinging like fire, 2 police officers arrived, Officer Martinez and Officer Chen. Both looked serious and professional. "Mrs. Markson?" Officer Martinez was older, probably in his 50s, with tired eyes that had seen too much. "The hospital reported an assault. Can you tell us what happened?" This was it, the first official statement, the beginning of the paper trail. I told them everything, calmly, clearly, starting with the dinner invitation, the demands for my company, the threats of declaring me incompetent, and ending with the wine glass to my face. Officer Martinez wrote it all down, his expression growing darker with each sentence. "And you said this was your daughter-in-law? Your son's wife?" "Yes." "Was your son present when this happened?" "Yes. He watched her throw the glass at me. He did nothing to stop her." Officer Chen, the younger one, looked angry. "Ma'am, this is felony assault. We can go to your house right now and arrest her." This was the moment, the pivot point, the choice that would determine everything that came next. I let my shoulders slump. I let my voice tremble just slightly. I don't know if I can do that. She's my son's wife. Ryan, my son, he loves her. If I press charges, it will destroy him. It will destroy our whole family. Officer Martinez's face softened with the kind of frustrated sympathy I'd seen 1,000 times when I was investigating elder abuse cases. Mrs. Markson, with all due respect, your family is already destroyed. She threw a glass at your face hard enough to cut you to the bone. That's not love, that's violence. I know, but I looked down at my bloody hands. Please, I just need time to think. I'm confused, I'm scared. Can I just have tonight to think about it? The two officers exchanged a look. I could read their faces perfectly. Another abuse victim too frightened to save herself. Ma'am, Officer Chen said gently, we understand this is difficult, but we strongly encourage you to press charges. People who do this once will do it again, and next time, you might not be lucky enough to walk away. I know you're right. Please, let me think about it. Officer Martinez sighed heavily. All right, but Mrs. Markson, you cannot go back to that house tonight. Do you have somewhere safe to stay? A friend? Another relative? Right on cue, my phone buzzed. I looked at it. A text from Ben Castellano. I'm in the waiting room. My attorney is here, I said quietly. I'll stay with him tonight. Your attorney? Officer Martinez's expression shifted slightly. He exchanged another look with his partner. This wasn't a confused old lady. This was someone who had resources, who was thinking ahead. Yes, Ben Castellano. He's been my lawyer for 20 years. All right, then. Martinez handed me his card. You call us when you're ready to press charges, or if anything else happens. Anything at all. Thank you, officers. They left. The moment the door closed, Dr. Chen began stitching my cheek. 6 neat stitches, pulling the edges of the wound together. Each one hurt, but I didn't flinch. Pain is just information, and this information was valuable. When she was finished, she bandaged my face and gave me instructions for care. Then she handed me a thick envelope. Everything is in here. The photographs, the medical report, the itemized treatment record. If you need anything else, call us. Thank you, doctor. I walked out of the examination room carrying that envelope like it was the Holy Grail, because in a way, it was. Ben Castellano was sitting in the waiting room, and when he saw me, his face went tight with controlled rage. Helen. He stood up immediately, taking in the bandage, the blood-soaked blouse. The whole horrific picture. Jesus Christ. It's worse than it looks, I said calmly. Actually, no. It's exactly as bad as it looks, which is perfect. We walked out to his car, a sleek black Mercedes that screamed, "Expensive lawyer," and got in. The moment the doors closed, sealing us in the quiet leather interior, Ben turned to me. Tell me they took the bait. Hook, line, and sinker. It's all on camera. The demands, the threats, the assault, everything. And the police? Came to the hospital, took my statement. I played the scared, confused victim who's too frightened to press charges right away. Ben started the car, pulling smoothly out of the parking lot. So they think they got away with it. They think I'm running scared. They think I'm weak. I touched the bandage on my face. What they don't know is that I'm not running. I'm hunting. We drove in silence for a few minutes. Then Ben said quietly, "You know they're going to panic. They're going to make more mistakes. I'm counting on it. And you know that somewhere in that house right now, Sienna is probably calling everyone she knows, lawyers, doctors, building her counter-narrative that you're senile and dangerous and you provoked her. Also counting on it. Let her dig the hole deeper." Ben glanced at me. "Where do you want to go? My guest house? A hotel?" "Neither," I said. "Take me to the Four Seasons." "The Four Seasons?" He raised an eyebrow. "That's not exactly low profile, Helen." "I don't want low profile. I want Ryan to be able to find me easily. I want him to think I'm holed up in a hotel, crying into my pillow, scared and alone. But you won't actually be there. I'll check in. I'll make sure the reservation shows up on my credit card. But I won't be sleeping there." I smiled, even though it hurt my stitched cheek. "I'm going back to my house tonight, Ben. Back to my panic room. Now he really looked at me. Your panic room? The one I had installed 3 months ago, hidden behind the bookshelf in David's old office. Reinforced steel, independent power supply, and a direct feed to every camera in the house. You're going to watch them. I'm going to watch them panic. I'm going to watch them search for evidence, and if I'm very, very lucky... I paused, thinking through the possibilities. If I'm lucky, they're going to break back into my house looking for those cameras I mentioned, looking for leverage, looking for a way to control the narrative. That would be breaking and entering, felony breaking and entering, I corrected, with intent to steal or destroy evidence, while I'm not present, which makes it even worse for them. Ben let out a low whistle. You really are terrifying when you want to be. I learned from the best criminals in America, Ben. 20 years of studying how they think, how they plan, how they justify their own evil. I know exactly what they're going to do next. Which is? They're going to call Dr. Miles, that quack geriatric specialist, and try to accelerate the incompetency hearing. They'll use my flight from the house as proof that I'm unstable. They'll try to freeze my bank accounts, claiming I'm being taken advantage of by that friend the police mentioned. And they'll find out the accounts are empty. Oh, no, I said, smiling wider. Not empty. The checking account still has about $15,000 in it, just enough to make them think it's real. But the real money, the $8 million in business assets, is untouchable, already transferred to the trust. They're going to lose their minds. Yes, they are. And I'm going to be watching the whole beautiful meltdown from my panic room, recording every second. Ben pulled up to the Four Seasons. The doorman approached immediately, then stopped short when he saw my bandaged face and bloody clothes. I'll check in quickly, I said to Ben. 10 minutes, then we head back to my house. You're sure about this? Going back there tonight? I looked at him, my old friend. My husband's best friend, the man who'd been helping me build this trap for 6 months. Ben, I've never been more sure of anything in my life. They think they've broken me. They think I'm weak and scared and running away. I opened the car door. But I'm not running. I'm circling back. I'm a predator, Ben. I always have been. And tonight, I'm going to watch my prey destroy themselves while I sit in the dark and smile. And that's exactly what I did. But what I saw on those camera feeds, what my son and daughter-in-law did in my house that night, was so much worse than I ever could have imagined. The breaking point wasn't just a line they crossed. It was a canyon they threw themselves into, and I recorded every single second of their fall. The Four Seasons check-in took exactly 8 minutes. I stood at the front desk with my bandaged face and blood-stained blouse, and the night manager, a professional woman named Sarah, who didn't even blink, processed my reservation with quiet efficiency. She offered to have someone bring up fresh clothes. I declined. I needed the bloody blouse for one more photograph. Will you need anything else this evening, Mrs. Markson? She asked, handing me the key card. No, thank you. I just need rest. I walked to the elevator, went up to the 8th floor, entered my room, took one photograph of myself in the bathroom mirror, bloody, bandaged, defeated, and immediately left. The whole performance took 12 minutes. By 9:45 p.m., I was back in my car with Ben, driving toward my house, toward the trap I'd spent 6 months building. You really think they'll come back tonight? Ben asked as we turned onto my street. I know they will. They're desperate, and desperate people don't wait. They'll convince themselves they need to find those cameras, need to find evidence, need to do something before I can use what happened against them. We parked 2 blocks away, in the driveway of my neighbor Dorothy's house. She was visiting her daughter in Seattle and had given me her garage code months ago. Ben pulled in, the door closed behind us, and we walked through the dark backyards to my house. The panic room entrance was in David's old office, hidden behind what looked like a built-in bookshelf. Press the spine of Moby Dick, David's favorite, and the whole unit swung inward on pneumatic hinges. Inside was a space about the size of a walk-in closet, reinforced steel walls. Independent power supply, a wall of monitors showing feeds from every camera in the house. a small desk with a computer, a mini fridge, a comfortable chair, everything I needed to watch my family destroy themselves. Ben and I slipped inside at 10:03 p.m. I sealed the door behind us and powered up the monitors. The house was empty, silent. The dining room still showed the aftermath of our disastrous dinner. Abandoned plates, wine-stained tablecloth, my blood on the hardwood floor. But on monitor 4, the camera covering my front porch, I could see something that made my pulse quicken. Ryan's car was parked across the street. They hadn't left. They'd been sitting out there for the past 2.5 hours, waiting, watching, building up their courage. There, Ben whispered, pointing at the screen. 4 figures emerged from the car. Ryan, Sienna, Jerry, and Patricia Clark. They approached my front door like thieves, which I suppose they were. Ryan pulled out his key, the one I'd given him when he turned 16, the one I'd never asked for back because he was my son and this was his home. Was his home. I watched him fumble with the lock. His hands were shaking so badly it took him 3 tries. The door opened. They were inside. "Okay," Sienna's voice came through the audio feed, sharp and urgent. "We have maybe an hour before someone notices we're here. Find those cameras. Find anything she might use against us." "This is breaking and entering," Ryan said, his voice thin with panic. "Mom's not here. We're committing a felony." "She's your mother," Sienna snapped. "You have a key. We're family. We're just checking on the house, making sure she didn't leave anything dangerous on, like the stove." The rationalization was paper thin, and they all knew it. "Split up," Jerry ordered, taking charge. "Patricia and I will take the upstairs. You two search down here. Look for cameras, look for documents, look for anything about that trust she mentioned." They scattered like roaches when the lights come on. I watched Ryan and Sienna head straight for David's office, the very room I was sitting in, separated from them by 3 inches of reinforced steel and a bookshelf. Sienna went immediately to the desk, pulling open drawers, rifling through papers. There has to be something. Bank statements, legal documents, something. Ryan was staring at the walls, looking for cameras. "I don't see anything. Maybe she was bluffing." "She wasn't bluffing," Sienna said, her voice tight. "That devil has been planning this. All of it. The way she knew about the embezzlement, about your parents' bankruptcy." She shot a glance toward the ceiling where Jerry and Patricia were searching. "She's been investigating us. On monitor 3, I could see Jerry and Patricia in my bedroom. David's in my bedroom, the sacred space I'd barely let anyone enter since he died. Patricia was going through my jewelry box, holding up pieces to the light. Most of this is costume jewelry. Worthless." "Check the closet," Jerry said. "Look for a safe." I watched Patricia open my closet, the one that still held David's clothes, the suits I couldn't bring myself to donate, and start pulling things off shelves. My hands clenched into fists. Ben put a hand on my shoulder. "Easy. Let them dig the hole deeper." He was right. Every second they stayed, every drawer they opened, every item they touched, it was all evidence. Back in the office, Sienna had found the wall safe, the one I'd deliberately made visible, the one with the obvious keypad. "Here," she said. "Ryan, what's the code?" "I don't know, Sienna. I told you I don't know." "Try her birthday." Ryan punched in numbers. The safe beeped. Red light. Access denied. "Try Dad's birthday." Another beep. Another denial. "Try your birthday." Beep. Denied. "God damn it." Sienna slammed her hand against the steel door. "It's probably all in here. The trust documents, the bank account information, everything." She was right, of course. Well, partially right. The safe did contain important documents, just not the ones she thought. Upstairs, Patricia had found something. "Jerry, look at this." On the monitor, I watched her hold up a small velvet box, my grandmother's pearl earrings, the ones that had been in my family for 3 generations, worth maybe $3,000 but priceless to me. Patricia opened the box, examined the pearls, and right there on camera, slipped them into her coat pocket. "Got it," Ben whispered, making a note of the timestamp. "Grand larceny." They searched for another 20 minutes. Jerry went through my home office upstairs, photographing documents. Patricia continued looting my bedroom, taking a jade bracelet and a gold watch. Ryan and Sienna tore through the downstairs, finding nothing but growing increasingly frantic. And then Sienna made her second fatal mistake of the evening. She stood in the middle of David's office, my office, and screamed at the ceiling. "I know you're watching, Helen. I know you can hear me." Ryan jumped. "Sienna, what are you—" "She said there were cameras. Fine, let her watch." Sienna's face was twisted with rage, all pretense of civility completely gone. "You think you've won, you old bitch? You think you can just destroy our lives because you're too stubborn to let go?" She was looking directly at camera 5, the one hidden in the smoke detector. "We're going to bury you. Do you understand? We're going to have you declared incompetent. We're going to take everything. And you know what the best part is." She smiled, and it was the ugliest thing I'd ever seen. "No one's going to believe you. A confused old woman with a grudge against her loving family. They're going to lock you in a nursing home and throw away the key. And Ryan and I are going to sell this house, sell your company, and spend every penny of your dead husband's money." Ryan was pale as death, but he didn't stop her, didn't contradict her. He just stood there, my son, my weak, pathetic son. I decided right then that it was time to end this. I leaned forward to the microphone that connected to the whole house intercom system, the same system I'd used earlier to tell them the safe code, the one they'd been too panicked to try. I pressed the button. My voice filled the entire house, coming from every speaker in every room. "Actually, Sienna, you're wrong about something." The effect was instantaneous and beautiful. Sienna screamed, a high, sharp sound of pure terror. Ryan stumbled backward, knocking over a chair. Upstairs, I heard Patricia shriek and something crash. "The code you want," I continued, my voice calm and measured, "is 0814, David's birthday. August 14th, the date my husband was born. The date you never bothered to learn, Sienna, because you never actually cared about this family." On the monitor, I watched Sienna's face cycle through confusion, terror, and then desperate hope. She spun back to the safe. "But before you open it," I said, "you should know something. I'm not watching from some remote location. I'm not hiding at a hotel." I paused for effect. "I'm in this house, right now. I've been here the entire time, watching you, recording you, documenting every single crime you've committed in the last 47 minutes. Ryan's face went from pale to green. "Mom? Where are you?" Breaking and entering. Attempted theft of documents. Grand larceny. Thank you, Patricia, for stealing my grandmother's pearls. They're worth $3,000, which makes it a felony. Conspiracy to commit fraud. And Sienna... My voice hardened. Felony assault with a deadly weapon. That wine glass you threw at my face? 6 stitches. Medical documentation. Police report. All of it recorded, photographed, and backed up to secure servers you'll never find. Upstairs, Jerry's voice. It's a trap. Oh God, it was always a trap. We need to leave. Now. Too late, I said. The police are already on their way. Detective Miller and Detective Sanchez from the Financial Crimes Unit. They're very interested in your bankruptcy fraud, Jerry. And Sienna, they're very interested in your embezzlement. You can't prove any of... Sienna started. I can prove everything. I have 6 months of evidence. Bank records, email correspondence, security footage. I even have the recording of you calling Dr. Mo. Miles, trying to get me declared incompetent. That's conspiracy to commit fraud, by the way. I stood up, nodded to Ben. It was time. One more thing, I said into the microphone. Ryan? On the screen, my son's head jerked up like a puppet on strings. I paid your debt 3 weeks ago. The full $180,000 to Apex Capital Ventures. You were free. You didn't have to do any of this. I watched the information hit him like a physical blow. His knees actually buckled. He grabbed the desk to stay upright. I gave you a clean slate, son. I gave you a second chance. I wanted to see what kind of man you'd become, what you'd do with your freedom. I pressed the button to open the bookshelf, and you chose this. The bookshelf swung open with a pneumatic hiss. I stepped out, Ben right behind me. In the doorway to David's office stood two detectives in plain clothes, Miller and Sanchez, who'd been waiting in the panic room with us for the last 20 minutes. Ryan and Sienna froze like deer in headlights. "Hello, family," I said. The next 30 minutes were almost anticlimactic. Detective Miller read them their rights while Sanchez called for backup. Jerry and Patricia tried to run out the back door, but two uniformed officers were waiting there. The pearls were still in Patricia's pocket, the jade bracelet, the gold watch, all of it documented, all of it on camera. Ryan collapsed, literally collapsed onto the floor, sobbing like a child. I'm sorry. Mom, please, they're going to kill me. The loan sharks." "No, they won't," I said, my voice flat. "Because I paid them. 3 weeks ago." "You were never in danger, Ryan. You were just greedy." Sienna fought them. She screamed. She struggled. She hurled every insult she could think of while Detective Sanchez cuffed her hands behind her back. "You set us up. You manipulated us. This is entrapment." Detective Miller, a patient man in his 50s who'd seen everything, just shook his head. "Ma'am, entrapment is when law enforcement induces someone to commit a crime they wouldn't normally commit. Mrs. Markson here didn't make you throw a glass at her face. She didn't make you break into her house. You did all of that yourself." Ben stepped forward, briefcase in hand. "Also, for the record, there's the small matter of the David Markson Memorial Trust, which owns all assets of Markson and Associates." He pulled out a document, showed it to Ryan. "You signed away all inheritance claims 5 years ago, Ryan, when your mother loaned you $50,000 for your startup. You signed a waiver. It's all legal, all binding." Ryan just stared at the paper, his face completely empty. "So even if you'd succeeded," Ben continued, "even if you'd gotten Helen declared incompetent, even if you'd seized control of the company, you would have found nothing. No assets, no accounts, nothing but an empty shell." "You were never going to win," I said quietly. "This was always going to end exactly one way." They took them away, one by one, Ryan sobbing, Sienna screaming, Jerry and Patricia silent and defeated, and I stood in my husband's office, my office now, and watched them go. 3 months later. The trial was swift. When you have video evidence, audio recordings, medical documentation, and a paper trail a mile long, there's not much room for defense. Sienna got the harshest sentence: 8 years for assault with a deadly weapon, conspiracy to commit fraud, attempted grand larceny, and lying to police officers. The judge, a woman about my age with sharp eyes, called her a predator who specifically targeted vulnerable family members. Ryan got 5 years, reduced slightly because he cooperated, because he testified against Sienna and her parents, because he was deemed manipulated by his wife. I didn't attend most of the trial. I sent Ben. I couldn't watch my son stand there in an orange jumpsuit and pretend to be a victim. Jerry and Patricia got 4 years each for conspiracy, bankruptcy fraud, and larceny. The federal prosecutors in Arizona were very grateful for the evidence I'd provided. And me? I'm sitting in my garden right now, David's garden. The roses are blooming. It's late spring, almost summer, and the air smells like jasmine and hope. The company is thriving. I promoted 2 of my best employees to management positions. I'm mentoring a young woman named Mai, a first-generation immigrant like me, who reminds me of myself 30 years ago, hungry, smart, and willing to work for what she wants. I started a foundation, the David Markson Business Protection Fund. We help family business owners protect themselves from predatory relatives. We provide free legal consultations, security assessments, and financial planning. Last week, we helped a 70-year-old man in Ohio whose children were trying to force him into a nursing home so they could sell his restaurant. We helped a 65-year-old woman whose son-in-law was embezzling from her medical practice. We're saving people. David would be proud. I touch the scar on my cheek sometimes. It's faded now, just a thin white line. But it's still there, a reminder that kindness without boundaries is just permission to be destroyed, that love can't cure greed, that weakness is a choice, and that sometimes the people who hurt you most are the ones who were supposed to protect you. I got a letter from Ryan last month, from prison. I haven't opened it yet. It sits on my desk, and every day I look at it and think, do I want to know? Do I want to hear his excuses, his apologies, his justifications? Part of me, the mother part, the part that still remembers teaching him to ride a bike and holding him when he cried, wants to rip it open and read it. But the other part, the survivor part, the investigator part, knows that opening that letter won't change anything. My son made his choices, and I made mine. Maybe someday I'll be ready to read whatever he has to say. Maybe someday I'll visit him, sit across from him in that sterile prison visiting room, and have the conversation we should have had years ago. But not today. Today, I'm watering David's roses and running the company we built together and helping other people protect themselves from the monsters who wear familiar faces. Today, I'm choosing peace over guilt, and that's enough. So let me ask you something. Have you ever had to make an impossible choice? Have you ever had to choose between protecting yourself and protecting someone you love? Have you ever had to accept that the person hurting you won't stop, won't change, won't suddenly become who you need them to be? Drop your story in the comments. Tell me what happened. Tell me how you found the strength to walk away, or how you're still trying to find it. Because here's what I've learned. You are not responsible for other people's choices. You are not required to set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm. And you are never too old, too weak, or too kind to fight back when someone tries to destroy you. If this story resonated with you, if you've been through something similar, if you know someone who needs to hear this, hit that like button. Subscribe to this channel, share this video, because somewhere out there, right now, there's a 62-year-old woman sitting at her kitchen table, looking at the son who's trying to steal her life's work and thinking she's alone. She's not alone. You're not alone. And neither am I. My name is Helen Markson. I'm 62 years old. My son tried to destroy me, and I'm still here, stronger than ever. Drop a comment. Tell me your story. And remember, respect is earned, not given. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is protect yourself from the people you love most. I'll see you in the next one.